Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our session. We're talking about building capacity for people-powered programs today. I'll get started in about 20 seconds. Thank you for being here. All right, let's get started. Well, welcome to this room. We are building capacity for people-powered programs today. My name is Jenna Smith. I work at the Ecology Center, which is a nonprofit based in Berkeley, California. I'm the Farmers Market Access and Equity Program Manager at the Ecology Center. We run Market Match in California, and my co-moderator today is the amazing Rachel Ward from the Farmers Market Coalition. So what can you expect from the session today? Well, we will talk about what capacity building is. We have 3 amazing panelists today so that you can learn about their capacity building efforts in the farmers market field. And we hope that you'll walk away with ideas big and small for how you can help build capacity for the farmers markets that you work with. And just a note on housekeeping, introduce yourself in the chat. We would love if you would take a few minutes right now, tell us your name, your organization, and why you are interested in this session. And welcome to everyone. You can use the chat function either on Zoom or Attendify to ask questions. Panelists will try their best to answer your questions in the chat after they present. And if we have time, we'll have a brief verbal Q&A at the end of the session. And if we don't get to your question, we'll try our best to follow up with you after the conference today. So first, a brief introduction to capacity building. We are here to talk about it, but what exactly is it? There are many definitions, and here's one on the screen. Capacity building is an investment in the effectiveness and future sustainability of an organization or program. Why is it important? For many reasons. It helps organizations do their best work. It can encourage localized solutions and support program sustainability. And I will pass it over to Rachel to finish out the intro on capacity building.
Thanks, Jenna. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Ward, the GusNIP project manager at Farmers Market Coalition. So thanks for that great definition of capacity building. Thought that we would give you all a couple of examples of what we mean by capacity building. Folks often think about staffing, but it could be anything from building systems and structures for your governance and fundraising, to technology investments, to DEI work, volunteer development, strategic planning, lots of different ways that organizations can build capacity. Next slide, please. And we especially wanted to talk about why is capacity building important to farmers markets that are implementing SNAP incentive programs. So we know that a lot of farmers markets are run by volunteers and/or part-time staff. That's not to say every single farmers market, but we know that a lot of especially smaller and rural markets have some capacity issues in terms of staffing. And we also know that nutrition incentive programs take a lot of time and resources both before, during, and after markets in order to be effective. And we also know that many markets operate within informal systems, and nutrition incentive programs often push markets in the direction of creating more formal systems like reporting and evaluation and data collection, that they may need to be focusing on building capacity to be able to do those things. And then we also know that funding is an issue for farmers market organizations, and that lends itself very closely to capacity building and capacity issues. So next slide. These are our lovely panelists today, and I will turn it back to Jenna to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks, Rachel. Yes, we are excited to hear from our three panelists today. And the first panelist is Brittany Steffi, who works at the Community Farm Alliance in Lexington, Kentucky. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that Brittany can pull up her slides and we can hear all about the great work at Community Farm Alliance.
Great. All right. I hope my slides are visible.
You're
all
good.
right. Thanks. All right. Thanks, Jenna. I'm Brittany Steffi. As Jenna said, I work for Community Farm Alliance in Kentucky as our food access program director. So I manage our statewide nutrition incentive program as well as our produce prescription program that just rolled out last year. So our program is sort of multifaceted. Community Farm Alliance is a farmer advocacy organization and policy organization. We're not necessarily a public health nonprofit like a lot of organizations that run nutrition incentives. So we have to put a lot of work into supporting farmers and markets specifically. So we really want to increase sales and income for Kentucky farmers, and that's where a lot of our support comes from, in addition to increasing access to local food for low-income populations and leveraging a lot of the federal food and nutrition program funds that are coming into our state. So I'll talk a little bit about our incentive programs. We have a few of them. We're not just operating a SNAP incentive program. Like many places, we've sort of expanded into multiple incentive programs. I mention this partly because this is actually one really important part of our capacity building strategy for farmers markets in Kentucky. We've put a lot of energy into really building up our WIC Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program matching. That's funded through a state ag development grant that comes originally from tobacco settlement funds, but is a grant from our state government every year. So farmers markets across the state that already operate the farmers market nutrition programs can offer vouchers through our program to match up to 2 or 3 of those per day per customer. The senior program in particular is very popular because senior hunger is a major issue in Kentucky, and most farmers exhaust their funds very early in the season for those. We're always kind of looking for more funding for those. But a major pro of that program is that it's pretty low tech. It's all paper based. All of the checks used by the state are just paper. Our vouchers are just paper. The market doesn't need to accept SNAP or have a machine or necessarily even have a full-time staff member there to run it. So it has a really low barrier to entry for markets that want to offer an incentive, but maybe aren't quite ready to commit to offering SNAP all the time, don't necessarily have enough vendors to do that yet, don't have enough staff to do that yet. So that kind of offers a lot of markets a chance to start offering incentives without quite fully committing to doing all of our programs across the board or doing SNAP when they're not ready, and lets them kind of build up capacity over a few years by offering that. We also do offer SNAP incentives at both farmers markets and a couple of retail sites. So customers can run their EBT card and get up to $12 in fruit and vegetable tokens. We also supplement that with a local protein SNAP matching program. So customers that get $12 in fruit and vegetable tokens can also get up to $8 in local meat, egg, and dairy tokens. That also provides a lot of support for farmers markets that are accepting SNAP and EBT to really build their producer base and keep a lot of the diversified farmers or meat, egg, and dairy vendors in the market and really successful and able to benefit from the SNAP customers that are coming. So to give you an idea of what our markets look like, this year we have around 50 markets participating in our program. Of those, 37 are offering matching funds for the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program, 47 for the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. As I said, that's kind of the most popular because it's that really low barrier to entry with just a paper-based program. 24 of those are offering SNAP fruit and vegetable incentives, and 18 are offering the SNAP protein incentives in addition to that. We have 5 retail sites, a local food co-op in Lexington, and then a chain of locally owned IGA grocery stores in Eastern Kentucky, and then 19 community market sites, which are local neighborhood-run multi-farmer CSA sites. We're spread out pretty evenly throughout the state, but you can see a lot of our markets are concentrated on the eastern part of the state, which is rural Appalachia, which presents its own kind of capacity issues just because of the geography. So I'll talk a little bit about the challenges that we see with our markets. And I know a lot of folks will see sort of similar things across rural sites and a lot of urban sites as well. And these were mentioned by Jenna too when she was speaking. So many of our participating markets are located in rural areas. So they're in lower income counties. Kentucky has some of the poorest counties in the country and some of the highest SNAP using counties in the country. Many of our markets are very small. The median number of vendors is 13. The median gross sales is about 30,000 for a market in Kentucky, or for our participating markets. So a lot are very small. Many might be operating informally, so they certainly might not have a board, but may not have a bank account or a mailing address, much less be incorporated or have a fiscal sponsor, which makes receiving funds through a grant program or anything else very difficult. So we often have to offer some support for building up that infrastructure. Most don't already have paid managers, or they're volunteer run, or just relying on vendors to take on additional responsibilities if they want to implement things like incentive programs. And many, especially in those rural Appalachian counties, don't have access to any internet or cell service, especially once you're in mountain areas. There isn't reliable internet, and cell service gets pretty spotty, which means even having standard like wireless EBT machines at markets can be really difficult because they can't pick up a cell signal. Many of our retail sites don't have a lot of infrastructure for local sourcing, don't have that network built up yet, may not even stock a lot of local produce, almost similar to a lot of urban stores that we see that are smaller and don't have a lot of infrastructure yet. So that's a lot of challenges and maybe a lot of negative things. I want to highlight some of the positive things that we also see. We have to do a lot of capacity building, but a lot of those lower capacity markets do have some really positive things going for them. A lot of those markets have really low vendor turnover. A lot of the vendors stick around for a long time and are very committed to the market, and they have really strong community support. These are small towns. Folks really support their farmers. They have really strong social networks. Everyone knows everyone and knows a lot of folks in the community and has a lot of connections. And they already usually have a commitment to food access in some form. They usually already offer SNAP, or more likely a farmers market nutrition program or another voucher program, maybe their own produce prescription program that they've operated through a local hospital or some other site. And often they're able to be fairly nimble and make changes pretty rapidly or implement programs pretty rapidly if needed, because they're pretty small and informally run. Whether they're always willing to is another question. Folks are maybe averse to change, but that smaller kind of informal operation makes it a lot easier than maybe a larger market with a lot of infrastructure trying to change things pretty quickly. So the ways that we address those capacity issues, of course, it's a constant challenge. We don't necessarily solve all of those problems, of course. One way that we try to address them is our Farmers Market Support Program. This is funded by an FMPP grant, the Kentucky Ag Development Fund, as well as some private funding. And we employ multiple technical advisors who are regionally based throughout the state and are all former farmers market staff from various places throughout the state. So they provide direct technical assistance and support to markets and are always just serve as a person that folks can reach out to when they run into issues. They also provide education. We provide a market manual for folks starting out or needing to answer questions, especially as they build up markets. We provided a COVID-19 operations guide, which was desperately needed in our state, especially as the state government kind of went on pause when the COVID-19 crisis happened, and the Department of Ag wasn't putting out a lot of guidance for farmers markets specifically, and offer frequent webinars and newsletters and networking opportunities. Pre-COVID, we had an annual conference that brought a lot of farmers market managers together and let them meet each other, and provided an opportunity for them to start reaching out to each other for advice and more assistance from other markets. I mentioned the technical assistance. We also are able to provide some additional directed funding, like mini grants for marketing. Mini grants for COVID supplies were pretty popular. And along with those also comes additional assistance on how to build capacity by implementing new marketing strategies and those sorts of things. Our other possibly most popular program is the Market Manager Cost Share Program. And I know that's often what a lot of folks are really interested to hear about. It's funded by the Kentucky Ag Development Fund and private funding. And this program provides up to $2,000 in matching funds per market per year to subsidize the cost of hiring a seasonal market manager. So that's a one-to-one match. So whatever we give the market, they have to come up with enough to match it exactly. Some markets are able to come up with more, and we'll hire the market manager for significantly more than we're even giving them. Markets are encouraged to fundraise in the local community or build that cost into the market budget, but we really encourage them to use this as an opportunity to build that capacity further and fundraise with folks and build partnerships with local foundations or businesses that might be willing to sponsor them. One issue with this program sometimes is that it's challenging to evaluate. Market managers do so much for both incentive programs and the market as a whole that it's difficult to prove really direct outcomes and correlations for this program to funders. We do see trends of increases in gross sales, vendor recruitment, market structure, program development, especially incentives. But I will say we do occasionally run into funding or into challenges with funding for this program because, of course, we know, and you all know, how much work it takes to implement incentives and run markets. But it is occasionally difficult to evaluate a program like this that has such broad impact across a lot of sites. But it is possible, it's one of our most popular programs because I think we all know that capacity building is really needed and that administrative support is needed at a lot of sites, especially who are running incentive programs. And that's all I've got. My contact info is there, but I can also put it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your work on capacity building. I see that there's some questions in the chat from Donna, Hannah, and Ashley. So Brittany, you've got some questions to look at in the chat. And for folks that just joined, please do use the chat to leave your questions. We're going to try to get through them. And we'll have a verbal Q&A at the end of this session. So our next panelist is Davida Douglas. Davida works at Alchemy CDC, which is based in Sacramento, California. So thank you for joining us today, Davida.
Thank you. Get my screen share going. Okay. So Alchemy CDC is a third-party operator of SNAP systems for farmers markets and the California Market Match Incentive Program across 2 counties in California. We've been operating EBT SNAP systems and incentive programs at farmers markets and farm stands for over a decade, with the goal of bringing fresh, locally grown produce at affordable prices to underserved neighborhoods. As a third-party operator, that means that we aren't ourselves operating farmers markets and farm stands. Rather, we partner with market operators to help bring SNAP processing and market match incentives and programs to their markets. Each year, we've expanded the program to additional local farm stands and farmers markets. We currently partner with 10 farmers market or farm stand operators representing 22 market locations. So growing the capacity of the many farmers and nonprofit organizations operating farm direct markets in our region is vitally important, as they're essential to our food systems. They provide healthy food access in numerous diverse communities, including residential neighborhoods. Many of these farmers and organizations are currently operating at a limited capacity with minimal access to resources and minimal staffing support. These market operators, as well as the community at large, can benefit greatly by adding EBT and SNAP access and incentive programs to these markets. However, few of the market operators would have the time, experience, and sometimes just the confidence to pursue government grants or other funding for nutrition incentives. By reaching out to these folks and offering to assist them with adhering to grant guidelines, including data reporting, as well as including them on collaborative outreach and marketing, we're able to reassure them that we'll be there through every step to help them access these resources and grow their markets and customer base. When we establish a new partnership, we make a commitment to visit their sites to provide on-the-ground training, as well as helping them with any other possibly unrelated technical support issues that we may have experience with. And with each individual partner, we go through an initial interview process to find out what operational model will work best for them. Sometimes they already operate EBT systems. Other times we work with brand new farmers markets and train their staff on all of the EBT and market match processes, everything from the at-market customer transactions and vendor redemptions to tabulating the grant reporting data, and even helping them figure out how to integrate the new incentive funds and processes into their bookkeeping systems. I found that the most important step in providing this technical assistance is figuring out what will work for them, such as asking them about the amount of time they can commit to the program. Do they have administrative staff, or is it just a one person or family operation? What technology and infrastructure resources are they working with? Do they even have a scanner and a computer, or do they pretty much do everything on their phone? Do they even have an office, or is their office just the kitchen table? We find out how the operational and data tracking systems that are dictated by the funder, how well they align with the market's current processes, and try to match those up. We also assess whether they have any funds available to contribute to promotional support or incentive funds, or whether or not they'll be entirely reliant on what we can offer for that. We do our best to match up our training and program operating instructions to fit with their time and resource capacity. We don't have a rigid set of processes and reporting templates, even though that would be easier for us. We know that that might be more burdensome on the farmer or market operator, possibly even to the point of them not wanting to participate in the market match program. So we look at what is strictly required by the grant or other funding source, and work on finding creative solutions to fit what they're currently doing and what they could be doing in the future, what they have the capacity for. One example is we work with a small family farm that doesn't have an office space, nor do they have a scanner, and they work all day long on farming, operating farmers markets, and selling at other markets. So the time that they have available to work on the reporting and paperwork is in the evenings. So I make sure that they know they can reach out to me in the evening via my cell phone, so that we can troubleshoot any challenges or questions. basically expecting them to only interface with us during regular business hours while they're either in their orchard or at a market would be completely impractical. And we worked out so that they submit their reporting and backup documents via text message, via their phone, because that's what works best for them, and also ensures that we get their documentation in a timely manner before any paperwork gets lost in the shuffle. Another example, we have another partner that is a nonprofit operating multiple farmers markets that is much better resourced. So our first thought is, well, maybe they don't need any capacity building support from us and just a conduit to the incentive funds. They have administrative staff, but it turns out that they weren't aware of the EBT Edge platform. So we helped them get their account set up on that on the EBT Edge platform, which has made it easier for them to reconcile their receipts to their bookkeeping, and also enabled them to better organize their data and backup documentation before they scan it and send it over to us. We also designed and printed at-market promotional signage for them, as well as farmer booth signage that clarifies what script each vendor can accept. We provide market match script for them and other program specific support because we know that they have their hands full running the market. We don't view our partnerships as merely transactional. We're invested in learning about each site's operations and want them to be successful and also connected to the community. These relationships allow us to establish realistic expectations and goals for each site, and we do our best to stay as flexible as possible to accommodate them. In short, we share our best practices and adapt to the needs of each individual site. We do our best to meet farmers where they are and work with them to incorporate Market Match into the systems they already have in place. What we found is that each partner's dedication to the community and to healthy food access really determines the success of the program for their business or organization. In order to fund this work, the Ecology Center has been a fantastic partner, connecting us and numerous other organizations and farmers market operators to the California Nutrition Incentive Program funds and federal GusNIP funding. In many ways, the Ecology Center helps us build our organization's capacity, and we in turn do the same and pass that on to the farm direct market operators in our region. The CNIP and GusNIP grants provide the bulk of our funding related to the Market Match program, but not 100% of it. So we additionally rely on corporate sponsors, local grants, as well as occasionally direct fee for service models where appropriate. And of course, we also have the help of many fabulous community volunteers. For our corporate sponsorship program, we put together an information packet with different sponsorship tiers, giving them different levels of acknowledgement and exposure, including having their logo on a banner at the farmers markets, as you can see in this slide, as well as acknowledgement on our website and social media pages and in our email announcements, among other things. We also were recently awarded a community food project grant from the USDA. One small facet of our work plan for that grant has allowed us to add to our technical assistance work by helping local farm stands and farmers market operators get set up to accept SNAP at their sites for the very first time. We're very hands-on in our assistance and are grateful for the groundwork that the Ecology Center and others have done with FNS and state agencies to clarify the process to become SNAP certified, including developing instructional guides. As many of you may know, the FNS application process can be confusing and oftentimes even intimidating. And it can be reassuring to folks we're working with to have someone review their application before they submit it, or have someone to bounce questions off of. And also just knowing that once they get their EBT machine, we're there to help them figure it all out or troubleshoot any problems they may have. Everything from the EBT card reader machine issues to questions about whether or not communications they receive via mail or email are actually from authorized agency, or is it just spam or phishing, which does happen. Sometimes it's just about making sure that they feel confident in taking on the new responsibility. Then once their EBT systems are up and running, we'll assess whether or not they're ready to become market match partners. The result of all this work is that we've seen SNAP sales at partner sites grow steadily year over year with very few exceptions. And market match recipients tell us how much they appreciate the program, and it's allowed them to provide more fresh produce for their community. And there's my contact information, which I'll also put in the chat for folks, and feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Davida, for sharing your expertise with us all and your capacity building work. And last but not least, we have our final panelist, Allison Thome. Allison works at Central Louisiana Economic Development Alliance in Alexandria, Louisiana. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenna. Yes, I'm glad to be here, and it's exciting to hear from my fellow panelists and know that we all have quite a bit in common. So I am going to start sharing my screen here in a moment. Oops, there we go. Okay. So I am with the organization that is actually formerly known as the Central Louisiana Economic Development Alliance. We just 2 weeks ago launched a rebranding. So my organization is now Louisiana Central. And pardon me, but I'm having trouble advancing my slides. There we go. So this is our new logo. We have a new name for our organization. We are now Louisiana Central. Our vision as an organization is that our region will be a uniquely creative and inclusive and entrepreneurial place. And we see our role as being a catalyst and connector and leader in building an innovation and knowledge-driven economy. So in a nutshell, we really want to increase median household income. And we try to take a systematic approach. So we do many different things to get us there. We focus on traditional economic development things like business recruitment and retention and entrepreneurship and job training and educational attainment. And we also do some innovative work in outdoor recreation and food systems, which is, of course, what brings me here. This is a map that shows the area that we serve. We are in a 10 parish or 10 county region. As you can see, it's a pretty good chunk of the state, but the combined population here is just between 360 and 370,000 people. So all 10 of our parishes and all of the towns within are all considered rural. As an economic development organization, we really take an entrepreneurial approach to our farmers market work. We value incentive programs not only because of their impact on food access and quality of life for consumers, but also because they bring increased sales to our small businesses and those side hustle businesses that are selling at markets. So we really see incentive programs as ways to create opportunities for individuals to increase their incomes. And before I go further, I do want to point out that the photos in my presentation today are all pre-COVID photos, so that's why you don't see masks. So I mentioned that I'm in a rural area, and of course the rural landscape is a big defining part of our work. So from a practical perspective, my work involves piloting programs and strategies by taking best practices that we find from other parts of the state or other parts of the country and breaking things down to see how they might apply in a rural, low capacity environment. We're able to do that because our organization operates and directly manages a year-round farmers market. That's the Alexandria Farmers Market. So we pilot our programs there. And then I work indirectly with other markets in our region by sharing the lessons learned through a number of ways, through workshops, networking opportunities, toolkit development, some one-on-one technical assistance, and things like that. Like my colleagues that were speaking earlier, the markets in our region are small and informal. They are very small and very informal. This is a typical scene at one of our markets. Almost all of them are volunteer-led and have no organizational structure or support. Yet, almost all of them want to offer incentive programs. And as you all can imagine or have experienced, unfortunately, that combination often makes for a challenging situation. So that shapes the way that we interact with our markets. So our approach to capacity building is really to meet our markets and meet our communities where they are. So that means that regardless of what the end goal is, the conversations we have with our communities are often around some of the most fundamental aspects of starting and sustaining markets. Things like what it means to have a vendor base and the distinctions between producers and resellers, why they should collect vendor fees, or how to use social media, or just the fact that there are laws and regulations about food safety and how food is sold. In general, our markets don't have capacity for incentive programs, but rather than just telling them they're not ready, we try to reframe the conversation in a way that relates those very basic practices like collecting vendor fees back to an incentive program or whatever their end goal might be. So I want to show you this checklist to try to explain what I mean a bit more. And I know this is tiny. The point isn't for you to read the words. I just wanted to show you a screenshot from a toolkit that we developed for small rural markets. It's a toolkit that's meant to help them with SNAP programs. But before we get into any of the nuts and bolts about becoming an FNS approved retailer or anything like that, we present this checklist to walk through questions like, does your market know its purpose and mission? Do you have the ability to manage a bank account or electronic transactions? Do you have a social media presence? So these questions, are about basic components of any market. We want our markets to have a base level of functionality, and incentive programs can sometimes be our gateway into those conversations. So when a market asks for help, starting a SNAP program, for example, it becomes an opportunity to build, this very basic capacity. We know intuitively that having this basic capacity is important. Unfortunately, we've also experienced some failures that have confirmed that intuition. In 2018, we worked with one market in particular to launch a kids incentive program. So we helped them get the supplies they need. We trained them on tracking some data, helped them get all of the ducks in a row. And their community was really engaged and excited about the program. And on the first day, so many people came out to participate and to shop, and it was great, except that the vendors ran out of produce very quickly, which meant that families who got the incentive had nothing to choose from and therefore couldn't use their incentive. So that wasn't good, obviously. The market didn't have a sufficient volume of vendors or products to support, this increase in the customer base. So we've learned to be realistic and help our markets assess their readiness and their capacity, as part of the bigger picture. Another aspect of our capacity building approach is that we primarily see ourselves as connectors. We know this work is complex and it takes a village. So we focus on connecting markets to whatever it is that we need, whether it's something that we can offer them or not. We try to connect them with best practices and tools and funding opportunities and partners. We also think it's important to connect our markets to each other and build a network. This photo is from a 2-day networking and capacity building event that we held in 2019. We invited the market managers in our region to come and spend time together and attend workshops on various topics. And one of the best successes of that event was seeing some collaboration between 3 markets in particular who were all located geographically within the same parish and who tended to think of each other as competition. At the time, none of those markets charged vendor fees because they feared that if they did, vendors would opt out of their market and choose to go to one in a neighboring town instead. But when they were all in the same room together, all 3 of them agreed to start charging fees and to charge the same amount. That way they stayed, on the same playing field. And it was something they all agreed on. So whether our market leaders are volunteers or not, we try to help them see themselves as professionals because they have a big job. I think you'll all agree with that. It's a job that requires dedication and specific skills. So it's important for them to understand that they are part of a bigger picture. And that brings me to the last point that I want to make, which is that we keep a systems perspective. I know I'd be preaching to the choir if I explained to you all that farmers markets are just one piece of a food system, but we want to help the market leaders in our area understand that concept as well, because they don't automatically think in those terms. We have other members of my team at Louisiana Central that focus on different parts of the food system. I focus on farmers markets. Others focus on food policy or farmer training. Because in our area, we simply don't have enough farmers. So we have to be intentional about helping our community leaders and our markets understand the many factors that influence what makes it to a market. So, markets are important and food access and incentive programs are important, but we have to be careful about driving up consumer demand, at least in our area, without also investing in production and in leadership. So, it's complicated and it's tough, but we just know that we have to keep working on all of these things at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, all of our great presenters. It looks like we have about 3 minutes left, which is perfect for one question that came in the chat that was for all the panelists. And Allison, I know you do have at least one question in the chat for you as well. So we'll go to you last so that you have a chance to answer that question. But maybe just take a minute to answer this question for each of our presenters. This is from Hannah Martin, wondering what tools or tips you can share about recruiting and engaging rural farms and farm stands into incentive programs. Don't know if y'all have something to speak to on that. Brittany, we can start with you.
Sure. I think the first thing is probably just to echo what Allison said about meeting folks where they are. A lot of our farmers markets, especially those that don't have much staff, maybe don't even have volunteers, maybe have 1 or 2 farmers volunteering to help run incentive programs, need a lot of support if they're going to apply for SNAP. Often they need someone to talk them through the whole process of getting through the application and that sort of thing, getting a machine even from the state. And we don't have a lot of those resources elsewhere in the state, so it still sort of falls to us as the folks operating incentives. So I think helping folks with that, not putting a lot of pressure and just sort of helping to build up the market from wherever it stands. As far as kind of recruiting markets into the program, particularly with the farmers market nutrition program incentives, we don't struggle as much with that in our program because we do offer kind of the lower barrier of entry incentive. If anything, we don't have enough funding to offer incentive matching to every market that applies, especially for senior incentives. For the senior farmers market nutrition program every year, we can't fund every market in the state that wants to do it. There's a really high need. And a lot of markets, they kind of just find a volunteer or a farmer or someone who will do it. So recruitment isn't as much of an issue, but certainly, you know, developing systems that folks can use, internet access and evaluation have been major issues, and sort of developing reporting systems that folks can use has been an ongoing challenge. And again, meeting folks where they are is kind of important for that too. I don't know if that's really an answer, but.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we have about 1 minute left. So Davida, I'm going to give you a chance to answer too.
Great. Yeah, so we've been working at farmers markets for over a decade. So we've had the opportunity to build relationships with farmers there. And oftentimes we'll hear that they also have a farm stand site at their farm. And that's how we make that connection there. Additionally, we have been involved locally in the past on local urban ag ordinances and urban farm stand ordinances. So through that work, we've gotten connected to farmers operating small scale farm stands in residential neighborhoods.
Excellent. Thank you. We're right at time, but Allison, do you have anything you want to add really quickly?
Yes, I'll say that we've had success recruiting farmers when we can engage some peer-to-peer action in there. So if we can get a farmer to vouch for a certain market or a certain program, that really, really helps. We've even just tried, recording a little 30-second video of a farmer that we can then share with other farmers, and that has had some success for us.
Yeah, love that peer pressure. Works for so many things, right? Yeah, as Jenna said, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. So please feel free to message our panelists. They've all given you their contact information. For folks who are more interested in farms and CSAs, I'll make a plug for the Incorporating CSA and Farmers Market Box Program panel that's happening tomorrow, where we'll be talking about all things CSA and incentive programs. So that's another great place to check. But otherwise, thank you all so much for your engagement and interest in the session. Enjoy the rest of the conference.